Who's going to tell us to sing?
Molweni Gauteng niyaphila. Hayi molweni Gauteng niyaphila.
Guys, it's a Friday. Can you feel your energy? Molweni Gauteng niyaphila. You don't feel, guys. Molweni Gauteng niyaphila. Okay.
Khululani bike nethu nizive nisekhaya singu heavy chef siyanamkela.
Good.
Hayi kutheni ngathi ndiyanothusa ngesikhosa sami. Phela ninikhonzela izandla.
Thanks.
Igama lami nguKaylee van der Kolk. Abantu bayandihleka. Guys, we can all take a seat now. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Inkosi kakhulu. Igama lami nguKaylee van der Kolk. Abantu bayandihleka kanti ndithi van der Kolk. Bacinga ndithethi Afrikaans kamnandi. Kodwa andithethi tu. Ndithethi isiXhosa nesingesi sodwa. Ndingumntana wakuGatshani ngaseDutshwa. Kodwa ndazalela kumthatha ngo-1989. Hayi enkosi. From all of us at Heavy Chef, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every single one of you in this room. And we would like to extend a sincere thank you to our three speakers for tonight's event. President Thabo Mbeki, Sam Paddock, and Sonqoba Maseko. Thank you very much for giving of your time and expertise at this event entitled Educating Africa. Ndafunda e-UCT, Business Science Marketing, kodwa ndagqiba ngo-2012, and how the education space has changed in this short number of years. With that, it is a great pleasure to be your co-host at this event entitled Educating Africa.
Well, guys, my name is Thabo Mbeki. I'm a creative and entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur from Khayelitsha, the second largest township after Soweto. So what I do, we do events around Khayelitsha where we bring people from town to the township. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to connect everyone who's trying to invest in the townships, because we realize that most entrepreneurs from the township are struggling in terms of getting funding. So if we have anyone who wants to invest in the township, soon we're going to do events in Soweto as well as Alexandra. So Kelly, can you please tell us more, what is Heavy Chef for someone who's coming here for the first time?
So Heavy Chef is an entrepreneur platform, right? The name Heavy Chef comes from the saying, never trust a skinny chef. We are not a cooking show, unfortunately. Ka ulambile, hai shame, ukolo. At Heavy Chef, we aim to inspire and empower entrepreneurs, right? We're looking for the people that have walked the talk, that have gotten stuck in, and have ultimately eaten their own food. In a nutshell, we're looking for the doers in this world.
And guys, what we're trying to do, I'm a project director for Heavy Chef for all the townships. So we were trying to reach all the townships, and the first time I heard about Heavy Chef, I thought I had an impression of a buffet where I would just have a mandarina, but it had nothing to do with food, and they gave me recipes of success and how I can be successful in life and a good networking space. And the first time they were talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and as a person coming from Ekasi, I had nothing to do, I had no idea what is fourth industrial revolution. Yeah, I'm also scared to say that I had no information, no formal education, but why we came to the Heavy Chef events is to educate people. And these events would not be possible without our sponsors, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Whipping the Cat, Taxify, Now Boarding, Step Fruit, Pay Fast, Doe & Co, Biobrick Campaign, Backspec Wine, Workshop 17, lastly, and our venue sponsor, the Bread House. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting us. And please do follow us on our social media at Heavy Chef on Facebook, on Instagram, it's Heavy Chef, and our hashtag for today is hashtag Heavy Chef.
Ngosia. Hey guys, a few formalities before we get started with tonight's event. If you're needing the bathrooms, you can go straight through this door. Left is the males, on the right is the females. Over there you have the fire escape if anything has to happen, or perhaps we bring too much of the heat and you need to get out of this room. Okay guys, and what you can expect from tonight's event is as follows. First and foremost, we'll have a welcome note from Lucanio Nia, a representative of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Following this, we shall have our first keynote speech from Sonqoba Maseko, Following Sonqoba, Maseko's keynote speech, we also have a keynote speech from Sam Paddock. Sia shall then come onto the stage and welcome our Heavy Chef CEO, Fred Rode, onto the stage to chair a panel discussion between Sonqoba and Sam. 20 minutes into this panel discussion, we shall welcome President Thabo Mbeki onto the stage to add his comments to the panel discussion. Following this, we shall open the floor to a series of question and answers. Right, guys, are we ready to begin? Yeah. Can I please call Lucan Lumiere, representative of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, up onto the stage? Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good evening first. There's a short clip we want to play, setting up part of the talk we have asking.
The Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library is a significant African initiative and will be the first of its kind on the continent.
The library will collect and make available to the public all available written, electronic and other material originating from and associated with Thabo Mbeki. This will cover the period from 1955 to date, during which Thabo Mbeki has been a conscious participant in public affairs, both domestic and foreign. However, this Mbeki material will only serve as a peg in terms of the material hosted by the library. This is because whatever I have done, as will be reflected in the live Mbeki archives, happened both within a particular context and involved other actors. The library will therefore strive also to document such contexts and activities and views of the other actors to whom I have referred. We will therefore understand the complexity of the task to build an actual, relevant and useful library.
The library will seek to inspire, encourage and grow a new generation of bold and independent African change agents and thinkers. It is the view of former President Mbeki that the unique and authentic content of the library is owned by all Africans, all on the continent and all in the African diaspora. The library therefore will be an open, engaging and inspirational African center for debate and the generation of new ideas. The TMPL is in essence built to share, inspire and educate. And so it has been designed to do just that. The signature Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library at North Avenue, Kalani will feed 1,000 other TMPL libraries across the country and across the continent. These 1,000 satellite libraries will be strategically placed at schools to spread former President Mbeki's core purpose to inspire a new cadre of independent thinkers able to generate new ideas and ignite fresh debate. The Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library is an iconic and bold initiative. It seeks at once to be an enabler, an educator, and a broadcaster, and invites the co-creation of all those within its embrace. Wrapped in rich historical artifactual content, it aims to activate new thought and discussion for a most important African and world audience. The Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library, a center for knowledge, peace, equality, and prosperity in Africa.
So there are several important things about this library. I think what we are very interested in as we build this library is ensuring that young people are at the forefront of this library. And I think we saw in this video that we just watched, there's a backward look in the library. But I think as young people, what we're very concerned with, the one of the hats I wear at the foundation, looking after the Thabo Mbeki Foundation Youth Hub. The work of the Youth Hub is about putting young people at the forefront of Africa's renewal, which is very consistent with what the entire foundation is about. The foundation is committed to Africa's renewal. So when you then think about young people at the forefront of Africa's renewal, the library, which is helping us look back and understand the context of Africa through the eyes of President Mbeki and others, what we think the library does give us uniquely is the opportunity to, one, look back, but importantly, use the lessons of the past and the present to shape the future. So there's a campaign that we're going to launch today, and it's called the Biobrick Campaign. Again, very consistent with young people should be at the forefront of Africa's renewal. Young people ought to be the ones building the library, right? Yeah. So today we are launching what is called the Biobrick Campaign. We will be selling bricks with your names on it on the library for 100 Rand. Right. So in the next week or so, we will launch the online platform where you can buy a brick or bricks. Right. So if you know that you want to put your mother's name on the brick, your brother, your sister, please do that. So details around the campaign will come out in the next week or two. We have your details, we have all of you, and we'll encourage you to buy a brick. The reason we did reach out to Heavy Chef, because one of the critical things around the Thabo Mbeki Foundation Youth Hub is about being both a think tank and a do tank. We want to be a platform that is at the intersection of thought and action. So Heavy Chef has got this really cool part about people who do things. So we reached out to Fred about a year ago with the intention of getting them to help us do. And this is going to be the first of many events that we're going to do with Heavy Chef, the foundation, the library. What Fred isn't in the room at the moment. Nor is Sam, Paddock, nor other speaker, Sonqoba, Maseko. We have a slight challenge. They're stuck in the lift. Right. So if you allow me to improv for a second, right? And so I'm going to ask us to take a few hands, if you allow me, right? What's our understanding of the fourth industrial revolution? Right? And especially in context of the continent, and also in the broader context of education. Don't feel bad, don't feel sad. Right? Let's think about it. We all came here for a reason. Let's get the discussion moving early on. When they arrive, we will kickstart. Is that fair?
If anyone has a question before Lukanyas sit down, please raise your hands and ask any questions. And also, if you want to be involved in the movement, please do let us know. But at the moment, we're going to take some hands.
Good evening to everybody. Oh, my name is Mutididi. Working. Okay. You said some very interesting things, and I may not necessarily talk about the fourth industrial revolution. Is it okay? Hello? Oh, is it better? All right. I mean, what I want to ask is not necessarily about the fourth industrial revolution, but is definitely in line with what you raised with the library and what. What is it? Okay, sorry. I've just had a hip replacement, so this is a bit awkward, yeah? Yeah. So, all right. So, what I want to ask is, by the way, education is very close to my heart. And so, with the library, my question is, I'm a believer that there is a serious look that needs to happen to the current education policies and systems in South Africa. Now, right, yeah. Okay, is this a bit better? Yeah. So I'm saying I would like maybe a bit of flesh on how, obviously the library, it sounds amazing. I think this is where we need to go, because education is the future for dealing with the previous injustices of the past. However, the question I have is, what are we doing to deal with probably the current policies of the education system in South Africa? And this is what I'm saying. It may not necessarily deal with the question of the fourth industrial revolution, but I think it does to a certain extent, because if we are not dealing with education the right way, and we are actually ensuring that our, people that have not been exposed to the education possibilities. But anyway, you got me. Yeah? All right. I'm sorry, I'm emotional, because this is very close to my heart, and I am excited about what today is happening. But I'm just saying, what are we doing about the policies?
Can I say this? The answers aren't going to come from me. Right? I have my own ideas. I think what we're trying to do with the free time we now have is for all of us to think together. Right? Fully agreed, sir, that the question of education, in fact, the question of the fourth industrial revolution is far bigger than just technology. Right? If we're honest with ourselves, the continent finds itself somewhere between the second and third industrial revolution. Right? There are many parts of the continent without electricity, problems with infrastructure, and a big part of the conversation is how do you use the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution to leapfrog and accelerate the way we address these challenges that we have. But again, the question that I'm throwing back to all of us now is how are we thinking about why our education, the plethora of challenges that the continent has, and how can we collectively think about addressing the challenges? Perhaps we can do a few hands, if you allow me.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah? I'm just a South African with a great passion for my country. I've been an entrepreneur. Started a business from startup, been through the pain of that. I'm in management consulting now. I'm doing my MBA because I want to get the acumen to be able to change the world with the knowledge that I have and share it with others. I've been a mentor. I'm involved in a number of youth development initiatives. And one of the things working in a Pan-African company in oil and gas, having exposure to countries all over the continent, both in West Africa, East Africa, the Indian Ocean Islands, Southern Africa, and North Africa. And Mr. Mbeki, with all due respect, I know a great friend of yours. She's close to me, Sabo. And having great respect for the work your wife does. And women have a great role to play. But back to the point, I think this is an incredible and very welcome initiative in terms of the knowledge sharing that we need to inculcate in across the continent. And so something I'd like to ask of the speakers to ponder and the audience is how do we share the learnings that we take from our experiences, very diverse across the continent, because there is so much that each country has learned through overcoming its own challenges and can share to create solutions for the future, not just in knowledge, but also in practical application. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Olani Stenjo. Just to add in the contribution here, or the discussion, we are talking about the fourth IR and also the 21st century education. What's been stressing me the past couple of weeks is as schools are trying to adjust to want to teach for 21st century students and whatnot, but how are universities, what are the discussions within the universities with regards to assessment, and us as in the schools, how are we wanting to change our assessments? Because if we're saying we're trying to teach kids to a future that's unknown, but we're still testing them almost every second day, they are writing a cycle test this, and they are writing exam on paper because of the university. So we need to feed the university, but how are the conversations in the universities happening?
All right, I actually have a question, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, but in the context, and you set the context by posing this point of the fourth industrial revolution, why are we looking at a library as the solution, and what are we intending to achieve with this, and what more is there behind this library that really presents a future for education? That's my question.
I think it's really, really funny that there are people stuck in a lift. I don't know about you, but I really find that funny, and I find that the fourth industrial revolution in our public schools is exactly that. They're stuck. There are no help. The decisions being made are made by people who are not accessing the best advice. The tablet problem, it's all gone. It was lots of money spent. Nobody really came to the experts and asked. The tablets were dumped. There was no teacher training. So teacher training, the teachers are the gateway. They are the people who need to be empowered. They have to be trained. I was part of that program. There was one training session on how to switch on the device. That was it. One. So for me, the statement is, let's get the teachers involved. Let's spend money on the teachers, train them, get them empowered.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thandokazi Kweyama. I'm a big fan. Can I just come in for a hug quickly? Thank you so much. Okay. This is the equivalent of being at Jay-Z's concert for me, so. Okay, so back to the serious business. Enkosi Tata, Enkosi Kakhulu, I'm very privileged to be here and actually be able to engage with you and people that are here. My question is, as a person who's really, is this working? Sorry, video. Okay. Okay, how do we start enticing South Africans? Because there's sort of like different spaces. One where there's a whole lot of development happening in terms of the technological space, and then there's the reception part of it. Because you can develop such a brilliant product, something that is solving a real issue, but nobody is taking it into account or receiving it as best as it should be received. Now, my problem is that we, as the people who are in the developing space, who are trying to change the world, you know, with all of those apps and et cetera, we are developing things for people who are still fascinated by Microsoft Word, who are still fascinated by Microsoft Excel. You know what I mean? Let's take a typical example. There's a whole lot of things happening in the space. There's blockchain, there's, the cryptocurrencies, there's IoT, there is data, all of these different things. But how do we then bring it back home? So for me, I'm going to make a quick example about what's going to be happening next year. Yay, it is the elections. we're going to have to walk to voting stations. And yet, how many people here have a cell phone? Raise your hand. How many people have a cell phone? Okay, it's a given, except for Thabo Mbeki. He doesn't have a cell phone. So my point is that there's a whole lot of things that can be used. One of them being blockchain, one of them is an Internet of Things solutions for voting, you know, where the secrecy of the vote is still kept very, like, at a high, but yeah, you understand what I mean. And also the one man, one vote thing is also still very valid. So I'm very, looking for a solution amongst us where we're solving problems in Africa, not just South Africa, in Africa, because as South Africans, we can be looked at as the arrogant brothers of the continent. So that's something that we also need to start looking at, okay? Being visionaries and also just looking at problems that solve for different countries. I'm so sorry. Okay, this is very, bye.
Can I just say, I'm loving the questions, right? By all means, let's ask questions. If you have, coming back to everyone, coming back. I'm just challenging us to, by all means, let's ask questions. No one, I'm not going to answer your questions. Sia isn't going to answer your questions. Let's answer our own.
Guys, before we continue, I would like to apologize to Mr. President Thabo Mbeki for being late, and to everyone on behalf of Heavy Chef, because there's nothing that we can do at the moment. Can you please give us maybe at least 10 minutes, and then, yeah, from there.
Hello. Hi, I'm Amanda. I represent Cotlands, the MPO. I think we've got the solution. So for us, it's early childhood development. The only way we're going to get our country to a point where we have full education is by reaching out to the little ones. We need to start educating when they are the first 1,000 days. It's the most critical. Bringing them all the way to the time that they are school ready. And once we have that in place, I think we will literally start getting to a point where we can reach the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.
Is the sound? I don't know. Thank you very much, everyone. I think I have a point and a question at the same time. I think the former president was very right when he spoke about the two economies that currently exist in the country. I think it's very uncomfortable to talk about a fourth industrial revolution, about something that's still coming when a large part of the country is still sitting in the second revolution. No water, no electricity, etc., etc. So my question is that how do we bridge the gap between the two economies first in order for us to be able to reach the fourth industrial revolution? Because you can't get there if you don't bring everyone along. So.
Evening, everyone. My name is Noma Rebedlomo. At the back end of what my brother there raised, my comment or question is also around how do we deal with the basics, because the fourth industrial revolution is very much centered around digital, right? Yet we are struggling with very basic things, even in South Africa, never mind the rest of the continent, like electricity. You know, where today we still have young ones who cannot study because there's no electricity. So those are things that we need to make sure that we look at and not quickly move to what the fourth industrial revolution will do. Yes, we do need to focus on that, but let's not forget where we are and how we bridge the gap, as my brother has said there.
Hello. Hello. Hi, my name is Priyash. I'm from the Awareness Company. So I want to answer the question finally. The fourth industrial revolution is about the information age, the abundance of it, the insight that we want to get out of it, and more importantly, how we're going to leverage it. Now we're here to hear about education. Yesterday, I was so fortunate, I was in an e-learning school. And that is one of the amazing ways that people are leveraging this fourth industrial revolution to get information out there to schools, whether it's in the rural or urban areas. So I'm so interested to hear tonight how we are going to leverage and learn and expand on the fourth industrial revolution, get access to it, but more importantly, there's an abundance of this data. So how do we tell a story about it? How do we then leverage and then get that knowledge to the younger generation, whether it's from primary school, high school, universities, or even older people who want to educate themselves from this stage? Thanks.
No. We'll continue. So every now and then I must just spark us to do a bit more thinking, right? Assuming all the big challenges that we say exist in education, right? Someone will say it's a government person, someone will say it's resourcing. Say we sorted out the resourcing problem. Right? So we say we sorted out the big, massive challenges that we say exist. What would we do? Right? And I think the conversation we're having does require a bit of imagination. Right? How can we collectively again imagine a renewed Africa? So the hands that are up now, so by all means get the thought you have out. Right? The next hands that go up, let's think about this.
Good day, everyone. Don't mind if I come in front, right? Already feel like a president. I feel grief if you think that education is expensive, then try illiteracy. In each and every one of us, there's a possibility to shine, and without education, there'll never be an opportunity to better oneself, to change, and to help others. By that, you are greeted. I am Sonqoba, founder and CEO of We Solve for X, an educational company. My story is not that glamorous. My transition is from classroom to boardroom. I'm a recent graduate. I hold a degree in BSc Actuarial Science from the University of Free State. Now, as what you can see, as coming from an education system for the past 17 years, I realized that the challenge with South African education system, it's one of the best in the world. It's not a challenge, but the challenge is how the content is delivered. In order to address this, we have developed a system that we have also patented so that you are able to have 1 million success stories from each grade, from grade 1 to grade 12, in a collective approach. In order to deliver this objective, I partnered with my former university lecturers as subject experts, for maths, physics, accounting, and also looking at innovative way and research, where we have developed a research program where we're going to have learners from grade 4 to 12 researching through guidance so that they are able to publish maybe where they get to grade 10. Yes. So, as we have realized on my side that it's not about the fourth industrial revolution. It's about the first African revolution in the industry space. Speaking from experience, my grandmother used to turn spoiled pap into a maheu. How do we get that knowledge together so that we are able to be in the mainstream economy? As I speak, each and every household, we have elders who have that knowledge where we can be in the mainstream economy. But in order to achieve that, it needs a collective guidance. I'm getting there. It needs a collective guidance. And we are in a process of partnering with institutions so that we have research centers, so that when we do our tutoring program, it's on a research-based content. Now, to former President Mr. Thabo Mbeki, in order to achieve our objective, I understand that we need experts and people who have the knowledge. So we would be glad to have you as our chief African Renaissance advisor. Now what this means, it means with your knowledge and experience, you are able to give us in form of a study guide, then we put it into our system, then we are able to distribute that content to the learners through your guidance, so that going forward, we are able to have our first industrial revolution in our homes and in our backyard.
Thank you,
I'm looking forward for your response. By the way, the name of the company is We Solve for X. Our slogan, solving the world's problem one equation at a time.
Thank you so much, brother.
So, Mr. President, I don't know how will I get your response, but for now, what I will do, the honorable thing, I'll give you my business card.
Okay, good night. How's it, everyone? Hope everyone's doing well. So, I don't have a question for you guys. I thought we could maybe start discussing and answering some of the questions that some of the people before us have brought up. Specifically in terms of a lot of people seem to have a concern with the fourth industrial revolution, and why are we even considering that when there's still so many problems? And, we've been to a lot of these types of talks and all of these things, and what we've come to learn is economists and trained specialists have actually found that countries such as ourselves might be in an advantageous position because we don't have the infrastructure of the second and third industrial revolution. Therefore, we can actually potentially as a country leapfrog right past the second and third industrial revolution and go straight into the fourth one. Whereas other countries, developed countries, have these massive infrastructures that they need to break down before they can build up their fourth industrial revolution. I'll give you an example. For example, Rwanda, country, third world country, they have nothing, they have no infrastructure. They are currently making use of drones to get medical supplies to people. Now, this is skipping right past second, third industrial revolutions of big hospitals, transport, all of these things, and going straight into the fourth industrial revolution. So I think the thing is we shouldn't be asking, why are we considering the fourth industrial revolution if there's people who don't understand, just as a joke, Microsoft, for example, because we should be considering how can we use our position and use it to the best of our advantage, leapfrog right past all of those things, and use the fourth industrial revolution to the best of our advantage that we can.
Hello, is that better? Okay, good evening. My name is Michael Bongani Reinders, and I am a student studying law and politics. Something that I'd like to talk about that was mentioned by a few speakers before, and I think it's the issue that we need to address most urgently when it comes to education in South Africa, and that is access to education. And I think what we have to do in addressing access to education is acknowledge the past that we have in this country. We have a past marred with colonization, and we have a past that has perpetuated injustices throughout our country that bring us to the current neo-colonial situation where we live in a divided society, where we can talk about trying to bring tablets to certain schools, but we have students dying in other schools by falling into pit latrines. And until we start dismantling the systems that keep these divisions in place, that ensure that certain people do not have access to basic socio-economic rights, we cannot hope to have them have access to the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kuni Middle. I think we need to start with the questions. Everybody's providing solutions. But we need to ask the questions, where are the biggest frictions in education? Because it doesn't help us solve small problems. We need to solve the big problems. So the first question I have is, how do we build a world-class education system? That's the first question. How do we train teachers effectively? Because we don't have good teachers, not enough of them at all. How do we get that? How do we fix it? How do we use technology to reach children in rural schools? Can we do it? I mean, we look at other African countries that have a better education system than us. So the question is, what is the process that we need to follow to be able to create a world-class education system?
Hello. Okay, great. Palesa, I'm just an ordinary citizen. I think I've thought about this for a while. So some ideas that have been coming up. This mic. Hello.
1, 2.
Hello. Okay. Yes. So just to get straight into it, I think the first point is entrepreneurship. I think somebody mentioned entrepreneurship today, and I think it was also earlier on this year where there were talks of introducing entrepreneurship as a subject in schools. And I think this is something that's been talked about for a while, and hopefully it's something that can be rolled out. But I think to go beyond than just teaching it would obviously be to have a practical approach to entrepreneurship. Because many a time we get taught stuff, but how many of us actually do apply the things that we get taught? For example, when I went to high school, we would have things like Entrepreneurship Day, where learners, for example, would have to sell certain things in groups or in teams, whatever the case may be. But I think if we start rolling out things like that, where you're not just teaching, but you're also saying practically, how are you going to sell a packet of chips to your peers, for example? See what those challenges are, just even in a school setting. So I think many a times we say we want entrepreneurs, but nobody knows how to be an entrepreneur. And if you're going to show it to me in a textbook, how guaranteed am I that I'll actually succeed in real life? So we need more practical solutions doing it. Secondly, when we talk about the library, I think the library is a great idea, but it's a great idea if I live in Rosebank or if I live in Braamfontein because I have close proximity to Killarney. But what if I'm outside? And you tend to see that even with our youth nowadays, most of them spend their time on their cell phones. It's amazing how, for some reason, our youth actually have data to be on Instagram, to be on Facebook, etc. So I think we need to use those platforms to sort of like entice the youth to be interested in the topics, because, I mean, these are critical things that we need to know. Thirdly, I also felt like even when I was studying, my issue was we don't have a lot of teachings that relate to South African history, which I do think the library is there to help us with these things. How about we also introduce those as a curriculum within our schools, because it's great that we can learn about Hitler, but what about what Mandela really did? And not just the highlights of what we see, but really in the depths in terms of the learnings, the teachings, etc. So I think these are some of the things that we can look at. Thirdly, the last thing, just to say, a lot of people have been partnering up with mobile service providers. I think sometimes even when you get into a contract, you can get a disc of some sort where you can get extra classes for your learners, etc. I think such partnerships would also be beneficial to say, let's use those platforms to roll out what it is exactly we want our learners to learn, and let's use those partnerships really to benefit the child in South Africa. Thank you.
I guess I'm going to build on what has just been said. The invitation to use our imagination is something that really made me want to pick my hand up. And it's in relation to how do we deal with the digital divide and how do we get everyone coming along. And I would actually say it's not necessarily, in my own opinion, how we would think it ought to work out, in that we need to work with regards to access and so forth, but rather the model of education itself. So it's been raised, relook the curriculum, certain subjects being put in, empower the teachers. But I think it's even bigger than that. We are still educating on a model, on a system that's actually based on the first industrial revolution. We've got bells, we've got desks, we've got very stringent ways of educating where we are producing factory workers in essence. And I'm not saying factory, but the mindset, okay? People that can regurgitate, people that can, I guess, say what needs to be said. When actual fact, we're meant to be creating, and I'm not, but rather, not even producing is worse, but rather allowing our students to become individuals that can run alongside artificial intelligence, that can run alongside the machine. And that requires, and I know I don't want to throw around the jargon and the terminology that's associated with 21st century critical thinking skills and the like, but in essence, problem solvers. And so when we look at our curriculum, it's actually, and I speak as a teacher, our pedagogy needs to change substantially. It needs to be in line with the digital age, and that's not to speak about access to iPads and so forth, but the mindset of how do we educate, the evolution of a teacher, as opposed to being the sage on the stage, to being one that is actually a facilitator of learning. We have recently just been involved in a project around the National Development Plan of 2030, where our students had to look at it, and it wasn't a school initiative, it was actually an examination body initiative, look at the 9 key issues in the development plan, and actually critically look at what the government has said. Does it work? Will it work? If so, how? If not, why not? And what do you propose? And the amazing things that our students have come up with, I'm blown away. Things that I, as a teacher, would have never been able to teach them. And so I think it's crucial that we relook not just empowerment, silos of subjects and so forth, but the system in its entirety. And the idea that we are still actually educating according to the first industrial revolution model.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a very simple guy. The one thing that worries me, or which is a question for this room I have to ask, all the solutions that we're developing, who are we developing them for? Is it for South Africa, or is it for Soweto to send in? Everything that we do in South Africa most of the time, we concentrate between Soweto and Sandton. That is the only South Africa that we know. Guys, there's a town in the Eastern Cape called Janssenville. It's a 3-minute drive town. You are in and out. iPads don't exist there. Where I'm standing is that the solution is in this room. Meaning that whatever we do, if you do it in Sandton, please take time to go and do it in Paddock. Please take time to go and do it somewhere else. When we have Mandela Day, there's people who are owning companies in here. Anybody who owns a company, when you do something for Mandela Day, ask your staff or take your staff to a rural town. There's so much potential. Funny thing is, we were in Graafrenet a couple of weeks ago. One of the things is I saw German or Dutch people teaching our own kids, regardless of color. So for me, as a simple person, the solution is in this room right now. Thank you.
Allow me my normal intervention, right? Every now and then I'll jump in. I think we've done a bit more thinking, right? And I think it's coming together. But there's this critical thing when we think about technology and education. A really scary one, that's the future of work. What does work mean in light of these seemingly scary technologies on a continent with so many young people and industries that are going to need even less people working in them? So we educate, what are we educating for, and what's the world that they're going towards? So 1, 2, 3 hands, finish the thought you had, by all means. The next group of hands, let's think about education, what we're educating for, and this future of work that we don't fully understand yet.
Good evening, everybody. Just a comment on what my brother and my sister were saying over there. I'm a director of an education company. We deal with a lot of private schools, and that being said, private schools, they've got everything that they need. South Africa, we have a huge amount of unemployed. We have a huge amount of people that don't have access to skills. So just a comment around what my fellow colleagues were saying was, on a Saturday, our team goes out to a school in Liebenhout-Bosch Secondary School. There's a group of kids there that are in the rural township that have never touched a computer before. They've never had access onto how to write a CV or how to complete a Word document. The guys are at the lift.
I was hoping for a slow clap. We have the chairs. Yeah, I can have a glass of water. A tequila. Guys. I actually don't know what to say after that. President Mbeki, we have just been stuck in a lift. I genuinely never ever thought that would happen to me. And in fact, there were 7 people in the lift. It had never happened to anybody, and nobody knew anybody that it had happened to either. Guys, for those who don't know, my name is Fred Rode. I'm the CEO and founder of Heavy Chef, and I have just been stuck in a lift. So, guys, we are going to have a bit of a truncated event tonight. We're going to aim for a bit of brevity, and we're going to try and get straight to the point. Thank you, everybody here, for all your patience. It is really appreciated. And thank you, Steve and Marco and the team, for being so diligent and immediate with coming to the rescue. So it is a huge privilege, with all the mishaps notwithstanding. I think I need to do some breathing exercises. We actually spent, I think it felt like about an hour and a half, but it was probably about 20 minutes or so. And we spent the time quite constructively. We have just created, I think, what is probably going to be a viral YouTube channel, because we did take a video of us. We did take some selfies. And actually, we did speak about education and the fourth industrial revolution. So we had an impromptu interview with Sam and Sonqoba about their talks, and I'm actually really, really interested to hear your views. So without further ado, I'm not going to talk for very long. I think you've already had the explanation of what Heavy Chef is about, the fact that we're a platform for entrepreneurs, and that we focus on tech leadership and creativity. And we're really, really excited to have you tonight. So without further ado, I would like to ask Sonqoba just to do a very quick version of her talk. I'm going to ask Sam to do the same. We can stick to a few minutes each. And then I'm going to ask you guys just to, I'm going to ask all of you then to watch the elongated talk on YouTube, which we will post. And what I'm going to do is, and the selfie, which hopefully will be more viral than Ellen's selfie at the Oscars. But I'm then going to ask a few questions of our two speakers, and then I would like to wrap up with asking President Mbeki just to share his views on his experience with education in the fourth industrial revolution. So please give a warm welcome to Sonqoba, Maseko. Would you like?
Good evening, everyone. I have done many talks in my life, none half as exciting as today's one. Thank you, first of all, to everyone for being here today. I was asked specifically to focus on the fourth industrial revolution. In the lift, we're talking about if we used the fourth industrial revolution better, we would not have been stuck in a lift for 20 minutes. And we're actually being serious. Sam was talking about how there are technologies currently available that could literally remotely monitor a lift failing, right? Troubleshoot the problem, pick up a history of information on how that issue has been resolved, and without human intervention, make the fix, right? So the reality is we're currently living way below our own potential that's currently available to us. And for me, the big thing is, the first problem is that a lot of people don't understand what the fourth industrial revolution is. If you ask, and I won't do it in this crowd because of limited time, what the fourth industrial revolution is, people talk about technologies. It's actually about a new era in human development and human capability. The first industrial revolution was about steam power, and we were suddenly able to have steam trains. The second industrial revolution was about electricity, and suddenly we had lights at home and at work, and we could actually work beyond the lighting of the natural sun. The third industrial revolution was about personal computing power. It was about actually having a machine in your home, in your office, initially a giant mainframe computer, then converted into kind of your personal home computing system that allowed you to automate tasks that you hated doing. It allowed you to automate and code and program a computer to actually do things that you found laborious. Okay? The fourth industrial revolution takes that to the next level, and what it means is that the line between the virtual versus the physical starts to be blurred. And we see it in our daily lives, right? We see kind of a blurring of the lines between human beings doing jobs versus computers doing jobs. I don't want to use the word robots because then people imagine life-size robots walking around, and most of the disruption doesn't look like a person. It is a computer machine that has actually been instructed by a human being on how to do certain tasks that humans have found far too tedious, and an opportunity for human beings to actually apply the fact that they are human beings with emotions, with creativity, with intuition, with an ability to solve problems, and with an ability to understand our own context. It means that instead of the 6 hours you spend on doing manual tasks, you have 6 hours freed up to do work that really is impactful. Now in education, what I was sharing on the video that will go viral, even if I have to do it myself from different IP addresses, what I was sharing in the lift was that right now, the kids that are currently enrolled in our schools in grade 1 have 12 years of schooling ahead of them. They will finish matric in 2030. We don't know what 2030 looks like, but I am pretty certain that we've already failed them. We can't predict what 2030 looks like, but we can very specifically say that we're not doing what we needed to do even for 2018. Just for 2018, we failed, let alone 2030, right? What that means is that schools and the education system needs to be able to strategize and be very efficient in changing how they do things. They need to be better at that than companies. The companies that everyone works for normally do 5-year time horizons. 5. Schools have to do 12. 12 years to figure out what it is that we're preparing students for. And we're not doing that. We're not doing that at the moment. One of the big issues for me is that in the ECD space, with kids kind of under the age of 6 before they reach grade 1, a lot of kids in this country don't even make it into an ECD center. A lot of the ECD centers are really creches and play schools. I mean that because they play, they sleep, they eat. Okay? It is not a preschool setting. But also a preschool setting and being exposed to that has been proven time and time again in our TIM study and our PIM studies, where they track cohorts of children that have gone through an actual academic exposure in preschool, and they perform better at reading and writing, perform better at mathematics at grades 1, 3, 6, 9, 12, right? And then there's a question of like, how do you teach these skills? Do we throw laptops at like little kids at the age of 3, right? And the reality is that's actually the research says that's not the answer for kids below the age of 6. The answer is to start teaching them to think logically, strategically, and analytically, so that when you start introducing technology and teaching them skills to influence technology, they actually are able to solve problems that they see on a daily basis. School is no longer about waiting till grade 12 to solve problems and get out into the world. School is right now, what problems can those kids solve? Because as Africans, we have tons of problems, not enough solutions, but we have all the tools available to us. And even though we have those tools available, we're still spectators in the fourth industrial revolution. We're spectators. We're catching up, if we dare catch up, right? And some of the simple principles are that we need to be teaching skills. It's not a content game. Content is readily available in our devices right now. There's also a lot of trash on the internet. And the question is, are we teaching people how to actually filter through that information and the stuff that they have available to them to solve problems and find stuff that is accurate for what they're trying to do? The question is, are we teaching kids to think beyond mathematics and English and history to find solutions that take a little bit from history, mathematics, entrepreneurship, African leadership? Are we raising our kids to know that they come from the African continent? Are we gearing them to have big, hairy, audacious goals about solving problems on the African continent? Because they don't need to wait until they're 18 to do that. Some kids are doing it right now, better than many of us in this room are able to currently. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sonqoba. That was awesome. And I think really one of the most critical topics that we can address right now. I think we had a very, very pragmatic conversation in the lift. I think we've got such a shared experience now that I just, before I hand over to Sam, I just wanted to say one thing. A massive congratulations to Sonqoba, because she has just gotten married 2 days ago. Where's Lutando? Lutando, can you stand up, please? Congratulations, Lutando. You're not going to stand up. He shies away from crowds. So the other day, I actually phoned Sonqoba, just for the first time I think I spoke to you, and you sounded a little bit distracted. And it happened to be the same day that just before she was about to get married, she took the phone call. So my respect to you. You said to me, I think afterwards, that you're a workaholic and this is really important to you. So I can see that passion coming out in your words. And so I think I just want to give a little bit of a preamble to Sam. Sam is, he's a dear friend. He's somebody that I've known for a long time now. I think we've had a shared experience in terms of the industries that we've had conversations over the years about some of the stuff that's happened, and I've just really watched with absolute amazement how you've grown Get Smarter into something just that we as South Africans can be really proud of from a global stage. So you and your brother, I know Rob is here as well somewhere, and so I mean I think we really are proud of you in terms of what you've done, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to say today. So can we please have a massive warm welcome for Sam Paddock.
Good evening, Heavy Chef. It's wonderful to be here finally. That lift was something else. And now we're faced with the task. Well done for micro-sizing what you were going to say. I'm going to try to do the same. Fred, I lied. It wasn't 20 minutes. I was going to do a 30-minute presentation. And now it's going to be 10. So I'm going to do my best to get into the meat of it. So the topic of my presentation today is the future of education in Africa. And thank you for the clicker. And I was going to tell you about me, but what you really need to know is that I'm # lift survivor. That's what I am. And this is a company that, together with my brother and parents, we founded back in 2008, 10 years ago. And today, we're very proud to say that we work with some of the world's very best and leading universities, 5 of the top 10 and the top 3 African universities. And this year, we will cross serving 100,000 students in 150 countries around the world. So that's the very, and this is in the continuing, thank you. And this is in the continuing education space specifically, so that's the lens that I bring to tonight's discussion on this enormous topic of the future of education in Africa. And I want to make the point, this intuitively we all understand that the future of education in Africa is important, but let's just unpack that a little bit more. We know that we have this notion of an African youth bulge, which is coming our way. And what that really means is that, and you would have heard some stats, but let me just tell you that a UN report very recently said that by the year 2100, 4 out of every 10 people in the world will be African. That's 40% of the world's population, 2100. But that's a little bit too far away because everyone in this room will probably be dead by 2100. So let's just take that a little bit closer to today. And by the year 2030, which is another year that Sonqoba referenced, that's 12 years away. And in 2030, let's just take it a little closer to home. In South Africa, Clem Santa recently crunched Stats SA's data to show us that we will have 26 million new job seekers. Add that to today's millions of unemployed job seekers. And what you have representing this importance of this topic is incredible mass of human potential, either harnessed through skills development or on the other end of that continuum, not. And you have all manner of humanitarian crises that you can take a look at. And of course, that exists on a continuum, and you need to decide where we land up. But the other part of this, outside of its importance to us today, is that it's a deeply complex topic. If we take a range of lenses to this complexity, we can see that in this statement, the problem of the future of education in Africa, we are dealing with educating people from 5 to 25 years old, all of those needs. We're dealing with people across 54 countries in Africa and exponentially more cultures in that context. And on top of that, you now overlay, that's just geography and customer. Now you overlay product categories, not products and services, but categories. ECD, primary, secondary, tertiary, layers of tertiary, continuing education. And what you have in this mashup is a strategist's nightmare. And one of the things I would have done if we weren't stuck in a lift is tell you this wonderful, delightful milkshake story about how we can get more pragmatic about angling in at this enormous question. But instead what I'm going to do is just give you the summarized version. Instead of thinking about it in dry, academic, strategic terms, what we can ask ourselves when approaching any problem, we can understand that whether we're government or whether we are private sector, we offer products and services into the communities we serve. And those people in those communities, there's a theory known as the job to be done theory. And what it is, it says that people hire products and services from government, from the private sector, into their lives. They hire these products into their lives to do a very specific job for them. And when they do that job well, they are happy and they come back and those businesses will grow and those government services will grow. And if they don't do well, well, they probably die. And when we look at that pragmatic lens and we apply it to the future of education, this big, hairy question, we very quickly realize, and let's just take the example of primary school for a second, so 12 to 18-year-olds. What we very quickly realize is that education in the formal sector is a bundled good. We do many, many jobs for many different stakeholders in these systems, which makes it incredibly complex. Primary school is a place for parents to drop their kids off in the day so they can be economically active and the kids can be safe and fed. That's the first piece. The second, of course, primary school delivers on foundational literacies and numeracy. That's the second job it does for the student. Thirdly, it's a place to socialize and network, form friendships, figure out these 21st century skills that Sonqoba spoke about around communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creative thinking. And of course, it's a certification tool as well. Each year, you get to decide whether you go into the next grade, and of course, at the end of primary school, you get to decide whether you go to high school. Those are just some of the jobs that primary school does for a range of stakeholders. And when we do this many jobs, without being clear about the absolutely essential job we need to do, we're not thinking strategically, we can't hold our leaders accountable to achieving the results we want to achieve, and we're fundamentally disabled from scaling these solutions. This is the reason why we don't have scalable education solutions in the world today. So it's true that education and this topic of the future of education in Africa is deeply complex as well alongside its importance. And when I think about deeply important, complex topics, the first thing I do is consult widely. And I would love to run you through this amazing range of leaders that I managed to speak to in preparation for today, but I'm not going to do that because the lift stole my time. And if this circle represents this topic of the future of education in Africa, the two things that I want to add to today's discourse that we can talk about on the panel, that we can have incredible input from President Mbeki, and we can have an active discourse where we can rub minds, is two parts. I'd like to provide a two-part guiding policy for how I think we should be focusing and dealing with this big, hairy problem of the future of education in Africa. There'll be two parts to that. But because policy level is difficult to argue about and talk about, what I want to do is I also want to take just a sliver of this big education world, the part that Rob and myself and others that have been a part of our journey at Get Smarter, the part that we can tell you that we think we understand, and just give you a sense of how these two-part policy that I want to share with you can manifest in a solution. That does not mean the solution will be right for other contexts and other slices of this big pie, but I'd like to share that with you so we have something to talk about, and I'm going to do that in a very accelerated way. So, this two-part policy. Part one, we should dispense of using the word education as a catch-all for this topic, and instead we should replace it with a job to be done. If we are going to go about the business of educating privileged students to become the future leaders of our country through our top tertiary institutions, let us say that. If we are in the business of making unemployable people employable between the ages of 18 and 24 because they have no other future prospects, let us say that. If we are in the business of standing up ECD centers so that domestic workers can leave their kids in safety for the day with no sense of any instruction whatsoever coming their way, but just being a creche, let us also say that. And the reason I say that is because too long we've been lumping all these jobs underneath these complex systems and trying to hold leaders of these systems accountable to achieving results. And because if we can't do this, we can't, thank you. If you're unable to be clear about the things we want to do, We cannot think strategically. We cannot make trade-off decisions. We cannot decide as a country what the most important thing is to do and then cascade that out through all the systems to make sure that we achieve those objectives. We cannot hold the leaders of those systems accountable to those very specific strategies we employ, and fundamentally we cannot scale these solutions. So that's the first policy suggestion I have. The second is that once we are clear about the job to be done, I believe we should be implementing audacious, digital-first, people-driven solutions. You know, if every construction company on the continent started building schools today, we wouldn't be able to build schools and universities fast enough to service the needs that this continent has for education. And we couldn't hire the 350,000 teachers that we need every year, not just this year, every year for the next 10 years to service the demand we have for education. So this can't be a purely physical solution. But equally, having come from a digital background, it might be strange for you to hear me say, well, actually, learning, and this is not strange to say, this is just basic sense, learning is a higher order need. And when dealing with, especially the foundation phases, we need to satisfy physiological, safety, security needs before we can get to the point of satisfying and doing the hard work of learning. You cannot teach a hungry child, and you certainly can't have an insecure, fearful teacher teach well. So you've got to satisfy these foundation phases. So what I'm talking about is a combination of digital first, of digital and physical people-driven solutions. And they need to be audacious. The word leapfrog has cropped up so many times in the way that people think about solving the African education crisis. And as I look at this very specific policy and implementing it so that we have something to talk about on our panel, at least as it relates to me in the panel tonight, I want to suggest to you that probably the highest priority job that we have to do in South Africa and Africa today is to help make people employable. That is the primary job we should do at the expense of all other jobs. And I want to share a solution with you today in a very micro-sized format about how I think that could work for 18-year-olds without access to traditional channels of tertiary education. And I think we should just focus on our country first. So, for the job to be done, make me employable. My suggested audacious, digital-first, people-driven solution is that it needs to be seated in a productive physical community, that it needs to be digital-first, it needs to be learner-led with a challenge-based curriculum, inspiring in-person and virtual tutors, community-owned micro-classrooms, in touch with local employers' needs in a way that bends the cost curve, results in a portfolio of work, and has people fall in love with learning. Fortunately, I don't have time to go through each one of those points tonight, but what I want to do is just pull out 2 or 3 of them to emphasize the areas I think are most important. The first is seated in a physical, actually this is a point I made before and I don't think I'm going to make it again. Really, we cannot do this hard work of foundational literacy without physical spaces. The 21st century skills that people so sorely need, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, come from being immersed in communities of vibrant learners, immersed in the type of communities they will be in when they work. And we have to emulate those environments. Digital first is the point I want to reflect on and talk before I close. It's true that we need people to be connected to the internet. It's also true that it would be wonderful to have students with mobile access as well, so they can have access to this incredible library of information we call the internet. But that's not what I mean by digital first. What I mean by digital first is that every aspect of the learning and teaching process is thought of from the ground up through the lens of digital first. How do we think about how we design and communicate and distribute materials should be digital first. How we think about monitoring and evaluating student performance, teacher performance should be digital first. As we think about the design of these solutions and the management of them, we need to take it through a digital first lens. And if we can do that, we can move towards the science of learning. Pedagogy is a term that if you are educators, you'll be familiar with. It means the art and science of teaching. And for 1,000 years, we've been very focused on the art of teaching. And the best teachers are the ones that can feel a classroom of 20 students and understand the intervention that's required for that student in that row because they know them. But you can't scale that. And what I'm talking about here is taking an approach of measuring everything that happens, from all the way through from learning design, competency design, understanding where students begin, how they progress, what learning they overcome, and of course what capabilities they develop. And I'm talking about developing a science deeper than it is today. And off the back of learning science, we can do science engineering, which is something that MIT Digital Learning Office has been thinking about for a long time and is now pioneering. You can contrast 2 different industries I can contrast 2 different industries to try and make this point a little bit more clearly. If you take the airline industry and the medical industry, what you've had over 50 plus years in the airline industry is every time a mistake is made, every time a flight is taken, all the data from what happens comes back into a central system. A flight goes down, the black box gets assessed, and we get to learn about what works and what doesn't work. And as a result of that, of the 1.2 billion air seats booked last year, there were 210 fatalities. An astonishing human achievement, pre the fourth industrial revolution. And if you contrast that with the medical industry, well, there were 400,000 preventable deaths in the US alone last year. And the reason that happens is because it's a litigious society, and doctors don't want to talk about the mistakes they make because they'll be sued, and on top of that, they're proud and they don't want the professional misconduct that comes with that, so we don't get to learn. And it's not as scientific as it could be. And what I'm talking about is taking a scientific approach to education, one that can only be enabled by what we're talking about tonight in the fourth industrial revolution, where we can take where the likes of Tesla, many of us will know South African-born Elon Musk, who now runs Tesla and has tens of thousands of autonomously driving cars on the road. And every day, when that data gets downloaded back to their servers that house, to use a couple of catchphrases, big data, and then do machine learning processing on them, and then finally becomes artificially intelligent in the way that they can drive. Every day, that algorithm gets better. And what I'm suggesting is an audacious, almost dreamy, impossible solution where we take a scientific approach to education in a way that has to get us to the point that every time data comes back from the classrooms involved and the people involved and the teachers involved in the system, that we get to the point where we are self-improving, self-diagnosing what's working, what's not working. We're taking a scientific approach to education. I wish I could talk about that for longer, but I can't. And I'm not going to talk about a challenge-based curriculum, but I know it's right. And the fact that we need community-owned micro-classrooms are so important because it doesn't work without community ownership, but I'm not going to talk about that. And employers' needs is super important, but we're going past that in a way that bends the cost curve because, quite frankly, this cannot happen at scale without bending the cost curve. And it's going to be so expensive to start this process, but it's only when we get this right over time that we can bring that cost curve down. And I estimate we need to get down to between 750 and 1,000 Rand a month for people to pay, or for others to pay for this type of service per learner. It must result in portfolio of work because we have the certification is moving, accreditation is moving from the flat one-dimensional certificate to the embodiment of people's work and how you assess people's competencies through their work products. And finally, we have to do this in a way that has people fall in love with learning because it is the competency of learning, of loving learning, that we need so desperately to have this continent. That is the competency we need at the heart of it. Because when people fall in love with learning, they figure out how that learning leads back to helping them realize their own dreams. And when we get that, we will have a continent that rises. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That was amazing. That was really good for a truncated talk. I believe you're going to do 30 minutes. You're going to do 30 minutes. I briefed him 20 minutes, and that was it. But I actually could have listened to Sam and Sonqoba talk for an hour. Really, guys, this is such a fascinating topic and such an absolutely critical one. I think, you know, one of the things that that came up in the lift. No, so much comedy actually. Uplifting comedy, but the truth is that it's a truism that we vastly overestimate the change that is going to happen in the short term and underestimate the change that's going to happen in the long term. I think that's a Bill Gates quote, right? It's like we overestimate what the change is going to happen in 1 year and underestimate what's going to happen in 10 years. So I think with that in mind, I would like to ask both of our speakers just to come up and I want to ask some questions. I'm going to open it up to the audience before we invite President Mbeki just to say a few words. So if Sam and Sonqoba can rejoin the conversation, I'm going to hand both these mics to you. Okay, does this work? Yes. So I think, Sonqoba, you said about the Sorry, can everyone hear me? You said that, I think that a very true quote. Please can we have no more mishaps tonight? Sam almost just fell off the stage, for those of you who can't see that. It would have been the perfect end. Yeah, you would have handled that. Guys, what do you think and this may be a tough question, but what do you think we are overestimating, and what do you think we're underestimating? Sonqoba?
Something that came up in the lift. I think you guys have no idea
That's always going to be
the
funny.
amount of conversations that were had in that lift. So I think one of the things we overestimate is this fear-driven notion that technology is going to take away everyone's jobs, right? A specific study, and it was actually a McKinsey study, where what they did is they took multiple jobs, broke down each of the jobs into tasks that people needed to do, and then basically predicted the likelihood of those tasks being done by machines. And then they aggregated those tasks back into jobs, and it was actually only about 10 to 15% of jobs that would be completely removed in the world because of the ability to automate, right? So it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is. It really isn't the end of the world. I think that's something that we overestimate. I think that, like I said earlier, this conversation about the robots are coming, right? We're still quite a far distance away from a human-looking robot that is basically deciding for you what you need to do and creating itself. The notion of AI giving birth to itself and AI effectively taking over humans and marching them into the sea, that is an overestimation. Some of the things I think we underestimate, I think that we underestimate just how quickly the world is changing. If you look into the notion of singularity, it talks about how we've previously spoken about Moore's law. And I think, Sam, you'd be very familiar with this we talk about the processing power of a computer will double in every 18 months. And we're now in an exponential era where it's happening a lot quicker than that. And effectively what that means is that right now is the slowest that the world will ever move. Right now is the most simple it will be to understand the technologies that are available to us, because those technologies every day, like you were saying from a Tesla perspective, are getting better and more complex. So right now is the best time to get your head around what's happening and dabble in the technology that's available to us, because tomorrow it will be more complex.
Sam?
Fred, I think, to try to be brief, I think the fourth industrial revolution is talking about the merger of man and machine, or the coming together of the two. And I think what we overestimate is how quickly the impact will be felt. I think it's going to take a lot of time. I think we're emotional first. And so we get spooked by things and narratives and memes that go around the internet, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take longer than we think for real impact to be felt by the machine learning off the back of big data and AI specifically. We underestimate how powerful it's going to be when we get it right. Yeah, sure. And that's the short of it. We overestimate how quickly it's going to happen, and we underestimate how powerful it will be when we get it right. That's what I would say.
Guys, I'm going to open it up to the floor, and I'm going to ask, we're going to do one question there, one question in the middle, one question over here, and then finish off with one question here before I ask President Mbeki to come to the lectern. So I saw a hand up. Go for it.
Thank you, everyone. Amazing speeches. Thank you very much. 2 questions. Fine, okay. Oh, God, they all lead into each other. Anyway, everyone speaks about technology in education and all of that as being proficient in STEM, which is technology, maths, etc. But the reality is that civilization has only moved forward because of the arts. So with kids being forced to going to STEM versus the arts? How do we reconcile the two, considering that STEM? So there's a change. Cool. Fair enough. Cool. Second question, so ignore the first question. How do we realistically bridge the gap between the fact that we're going into the fourth industrial revolution and there's still a number of kids stuck in the second industrial revolution, but there's still a large number of kids that can't even read for understanding after 4 years of school in their own languages? How do we speak about technology, but how do we fundamentally get the basics right in that way? After 4 years of school, kids still can't even read for understanding. And yet we're out here speaking about the fourth industrial revolution and moving the country forward. So
Cool, thank you.
So I'm happy to answer that. So I think everyone in the audience, for those who didn't hear, the first question about STEM versus arts was that effectively the new conversation is about STEAM, which brings in the arts. I think, and the big thing about that, you said, how do we manage arts versus STEM? That's the first problem in thinking. It's not the one versus the other. It's got to be collaborative. Some solutions will come from artists and people who studied humanities and blended in with STEM-type solutions will make them better. If you don't believe me, go to really bad-looking websites and really bad architectured products that are painful to use. Just from a tech perspective, you need both. And then this whole thing about bridging the gap, I think, and I'm also going to let Sam answer this one from a tech usage perspective, but I think with bridging the gap, the problem, and I mentioned this earlier, the problem is that we're trying to catch up on stuff that's already outdated. We're trying to catch up in a way and in an approach that's already outdated. So we say, let's go train 500,000 teachers to teach them to teach better, right? Which is what we should have done, I don't know how many years ago. And now the question becomes, what's the best way to get that done now? And it's less gradual, it's less backward looking, it's forward looking. It's about what research and data do we have that shows the best way to teach a child to read, right? And where it's a tech solution and we don't have a lot of schools that have access to tech, how do we present that solution in a way that works within a school? And there are solutions like that, where you don't need internet and you can still have access to the best teachers and the best kind of feedback and customized learning to get you where you need to get to. And that's the other thing, is that this herd mentality of let's get 25 kids across the line has failed us. The question is, for each kid in that class, how do we get them not across the line, but to the best of their ability?
And then to segue in from that, I think, so just to answer the second question first, I think we need to use the capabilities that come with the fourth industrial revolution technologies to pull people stuck in the second industrial revolution into ours. That's the only way I know how to do it. And also, directionally, that's the only way I know how to do it. I don't know that anyone knows how to do that yet, which is where the audacious solutions need to come from. That's kind of a view I take. The second is this notion of STEM is well researched and documented, and Stanford University's Hoover Institute has recently shown that it is, economic growth is predicated on skills. It is preceded by skills. And their very clear findings, which are controversial, especially in the context of this conversation, is that it is maths and science, primarily, that predicate that economic growth. The key for me is, as we look, we're human first, and the arts, and some 21st century version of the arts and science, that's the key for me, is there's an evolution piece here. It's not as it is today. It's an evolutionary piece which touches on these 21st century skills of collaboration, communication, creative skills, and problem solving that we need to get into. And there needs to be an evolution of the arts in a way that's very relevant to today's context.
We have a few questions. Well, we had one question over here. There we go.
Thank you very much for both your very inspiring talks. My name is Munges Ntati from WordStart. So there is a 17-year-old Ghanaian who has built a cryptocurrency marketing company that has raised $43 million in transactions through his company. how do we learn from that? So almost scientifically or technologically, how do we learn from these successes in the education system to then teach better and to also get out of the way when a 17-year-old like that is actually making such progress, and they are an African for that matter?
Just so I can get some clarity on it, they've raised money?
Yeah, so they were able to coordinate $42 million worth of transactions in this company.
Okay, that's impressive. To get out of their way, I mean, it's true that we need to experiment broadly with new technologies, and that the youth are very open to doing that. It's no wonder we've had so many new dollar millionaires and successful business people coming from early 20s, even in their late teens, as a result of their experimentation with new technology, not being bound by biases and sunk costs in their lives professionally and personally that stop them from fully exploring these things. As a guiding principle, I think we need to have a discourse publicly that appreciates experimentation, that means that we are comfortable with risk-taking, and that we do that responsibly, which is hard to do, but should be part of our public discourse.
So I want to answer that question very practically, and the first thing is you say, how do we learn from that education system that Ghanaian child has come out of? And I think the reality on the continent is that most of these kids are brilliant despite the education system. Despite the education system. These kids are getting out there, learning things on their own, exposing themselves to stuff despite the education system. And that's part of the problem. A practical kind of answer to that is I'm going to use my most recent experience in Future Nation schools. And effectively, what it is number one, this whole notion that failure is not the end of the world. We need to teach that in school, right? We need to teach that way before they enter the world of work. The second thing for me is around starting to equip them with tools and skills within the education system and curriculum that allow them to start solving problems today, right? A very practical example of this is in Future Nation schools where I was working is we had grade 8 learners that we got for the first time in January. Within 6 months, one of the projects that they needed to do was that politics was very topical at the time, and we basically got them to do a couple of instances across subjects. And the thing was, we wanted them to understand how politics works, we wanted them to understand how the different layers of government work, but make it practical, right? And in one aspect of African studies, they learned about the 3 layers of government and who elects whatever and who can remove whoever and what happens when someone's removed. In accounting and EMS, they learned about currency and about where we started from Africans from a currency perspective, how do they create their own currency. From a tech perspective, they learned how to build a monopoly game in tech, right? That was a monopoly game on the workings of government in our own country. Right? And they were able to pull it off. They're able to do these things. We're the ones that think that they're not able to. It's equip them with the skills, throw the problem at them, they'll find the solution. Don't worry about them, you giving them the solution. They'll find it. Give them the skills, let them do it.
Final questions? We have a question over there.
Nele. I'm an architect who actually works with Future Nation schools. And from what I've heard today, it seems like the solution to bridging the gap and solving all these solutions is the 4th Industrial Revolution. We're not trying to get there. It is the means which we will use to get there. So keeping this in mind and keeping in mind the fact that the students are the ones that are actually providing the solutions, how do you think we can change the way we teach to put the students at the forefront, get them to teach us what we need to do in order to basically recreate the world in the image that we require it to be.
All right. That's very nice of you. All right, so how do we change how we teach? First scary statistic is that We have just under we're probably sitting closer to 500,000 teachers in South Africa across the public and private system. More than 60% of our current teachers hit retirement age within the next 5 to 10 years. Okay? Within the next 5 to 10 years, more than 60% of our teachers actually hit retirement age. Some of them may work beyond retirement, but that's the reality. Our pipeline for teachers at the moment is not what it needs to be. It is the curriculum we teach our teachers currently in our universities is not what it needs to be. It's far from what it needs to be, right? And how do we rethink how we teach? Number one, we need to let go of the notion that one person knows everything. Teachers, I do not know everything. I feel for teachers who are expected to know everything. I think it's an unfair expectation. I think that we need to move from a one-directional conversation to a collaborative learning experience for teachers, for students, for people, because we're still learning in corporate, in companies, in entrepreneurship. We're learning, right? And we don't know all the answers even when you're the founder of your own business. You need to be able to collaboratively learn with people. So for me, the biggest thing is how we need to change how we teach is we need to stop expecting everything out of our teachers. We need to realize that some people who haven't been trained as teachers could be pretty awesome teachers because they have some relevant real-life experience to bring to the classroom that makes the theory more practical than what we put down the throats of children. But this notion that you need to know everything is outdated. It's been outdated.
It's a super question, and it should occupy many of our minds. I tried my best to cover my view of it in the final few slides that I had. I think to add to that, outside of taking a scientific approach, an increasingly scientific approach to teaching, which will tell us what works and what doesn't work. A lot of teaching methodologies that simply don't work, and we don't understand them yet. I would say that probably if I had to single out one piece, one main change, we should be moving towards challenge-based learning, which emulates the real-world environment where we come up against challenges and then we do the hard work of learning to solve them. And in that environment, as Sonqoba said, we need a move where teachers are moving from, as the kind of popular saying goes, from sages on the stage to guide on the side. And what that has teachers do is not didactically directing students, but students, the locus of control in the learning process, shifting towards the student. This is fundamentally motivating for the student. They get to choose their challenges, embrace them, and over, let's say, a 3-week period, they get to deal with those challenges. And as they come up against problems, they are helped by teachers and guides on the side who are there to help them when they find themselves stuck. But fundamentally, it is about the shift. And I think that's actually the fundamental shift that's taken place with the internet and the open system we live in today, is that we've already been fundamentally disrupted. We've literally already been disrupted how we teach and learn. And it's because of the internet and mobile phones primarily. And we need to take that through and carry it into the pedagogy that we take into the classrooms.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. We don't have time. Okay, sorry, we do not have time. Well, there was this incident with the lift earlier, so I have a pretty good excuse. Without further ado, can we all please give a very, very, very warm welcome to President Mbeki?
Can we all please stand, guys? Thank you.
Are you sitting there or there? Bye-bye. Yeah, thanks a lot. I honestly do not have much to say. It's partly because my voice is something wrong with it. And so you'll pardon me for that. You know, around, I think around 2000, we decided in government, we decided to establish an advisory panel on ICTs. I paid an official visit to the US, 2000, and thought we'd take advantage of that to talk to some of the big corporate chiefs in this field, Microsoft, everybody else. And so when I went to meet one of these big chiefs, and I said to him, we were setting up this advisory panel, and we'd like you to be a member. And he said to me, what should we advise you about? So I said to him, my problem is that I don't know enough about what I don't know. So I can't even answer the question, what you should advise me about. And that was a genuine response. Because truly as government at that level, we did not know what these information and communication technologies were. And therefore, when you talked about applications, to people who were ignorant, they were incapable of imagining application. I remember one of the sessions that we had with them. They talked about Wi-Fi. So we, the South African delegation, government, so we're stealing a look at one another. Because we honestly didn't know what this Wi-Fi is. And we're speaking very eloquently about the importance of Wi-Fi and this and that, and this is what it will do, etc. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because it's obvious that among us here we have gurus in this area of the fourth industrial revolution and education. And two of them is, they're sitting there, Sonqoba and Sam. And there are others, as I was listening. But to tell you the truth, a lot of what you said flew over my head. I didn't understand it. We clap out of as a courtesy. As a courtesy, so because otherwise it would look funny. But certainly, I'm one of the people here who has learned something today. But I'm quite sure not as much as I could have if I had been better prepared. Now, I think it is obvious that the technological change represented by this thing, the fourth industrial revolution, is happening, will happen. We can't stop it. It will impact on our lives. We may overestimate, or underestimate, whatever, but it will do that. It's something that can't be avoided. But there's a fundamental question that arose tonight. How prepared is this society to respond to that reality, which is here already, will continue coming? How prepared are we? And I don't think we are. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg is a very educated man. Professor Marwala. He writes books and he always likes giving me signed copies. He is my friend. So we have titles like this. Artificial Intelligence and the Solution of Economic Forecasting. I open the book. I can't go beyond the first paragraph. I don't understand. Now, and Professor Marwala is insisting, and I agree with him, that it's important that the South African universities, all of them, should teach the fourth industrial revolution. Because it's there and it's coming. Now, in the end, I want to make a suggestion. You see, I think we would have wasted a lot of talent if we don't come with some decision out of here about this question. Because it's a real, practical challenge that's facing us as a country. Is it possible for us that we get those of us who are skilled, knowledgeable, to say, why don't we get together and prepare a 20-page document about what we need to do, what this country needs to do in order to respond to this particular challenge of the fourth industrial revolution and education. Just to give you a small practical example of what might happen if we do that. You know, I'm a Chancellor of the University of South Africa. I agreed to do that thing because I knew that all you do is to hand out certificates. But the University Council has a bit of a different view about what the responsibilities of a chancellor are. The biggest college, the university has got 8 colleges. The biggest college is the College of Education, which produces almost 50% of the new teachers in this country. It's very big. Now because I'm Chancellor, I can convene any meeting of the university anytime. And I would like to be able to say to the College of Education, here is thinking about how to teach, how to train teachers to do what, how they should teach. How do you produce this child who's a problem solver? And I would like to do that and talk to this college, which produces almost 50% of the new teachers in South Africa. But if you ask me to do that on Monday, what would I say to them? I'm suggesting really seriously that maybe under the leadership of the big chef here, and certainly Max Bogona here from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation would help. Why don't a few of us get together and really seriously put together something, a proposal so that this country can respond practically to this challenge? I think we should do that. I think we should agree to do that. It's important. I'm not very popular among some people in the country, which is okay.
We love you.
Because we have a national development plan. And I keep saying, it is not a plan. It's a vision. And so when people say, now, why are we not implementing? We're not implementing because there's no plan. The vision might very well be very good, very correct. But how do we get to produce what is contained in this vision? How do we get to deal with education for the Industrial Revolution in the manner that we're talking, in a way that actually produces results? So to do a plan of action on this area, which must take into account the fact that Thabo Mbeki is absolutely ignorant. But you want him on board with regard to this matter, so you got to find a way of taking him on board, and therefore not speaking above his head and obliging him to clap out of courtesy. I think it's also important in this context that, as all of us know, we've got too many crises. I don't know where you would look in South Africa where you would not find crisis. And we just look at the levels and the types of crime. There's something that's gone wrong in the community. Loss of respect for the law. Loss of respect for lives, for women. Something that's fundamentally wrong. Now, I'm saying you'd find that right across the board. So, we are all facing these emergencies and crises every day, which therefore reduces everything to the same common denominator. This area we're talking about, the fourth industrial revolution and education, is critically important. We need to present it in a way such that it's actionable, and it's not just an area around which to make eloquent speeches. It's actionable, because otherwise my attention is drawn to too many other problems in the country. So, let me tell you the last story before I sit down. There was a very, many years ago, a member of, minister in government of Tanzania. And he used to tell a story. In all of the liberation movements in this region, Southern Africa were all there in Tanzania. The Mozambicans and Frelimo, the MPLA from Angola, the ANC and all that. So the minister would say, one day, we, the government of Tanzania, told Frelimo that there's some Portuguese mercenaries who've arrived here in Tanzania to kill you people. So he would say, Frelimo would say, where are they? And would tell them that's where they are. Frelimo would say, we will act and go and deal with them. Then on another day, some mercenaries from apartheid South Africa came. So we went and reported to the ANC. some mercenaries from South Africa were here to get you. Where are they? There they are. And the ANC said, well, now let's call a conference to go and discuss this matter. I think it's a bit of a national disease. We like talking about these issues. This is what ought to happen, should happen, da, da, da. I think we need to get beyond this stage of calling conferences and symposia. And I have not discussed this with President Ramaphosa, but I will do it. Normally when the Parliament meets for the State of the Nation address, the presiding officers invite us to come as their guests. So I was at the State of the Nation address earlier this year. And President Ramaphosa, you remember, had been newly elected and delivered the State of the Address. And he said, some of the things he said, we've got a serious problem of unemployment, and therefore we're going to call a job summit. We've got a serious problem of low levels of investment in the economy. Therefore, we're going to call an investment conference. Oh, I was sitting there listening. Conference, I said, typical South Africa. I think let's go beyond this. And coming out of this engagement we've had today, really do this thing of producing something actionable so that we do indeed become part of this industrial revolution forth and have this impact we're talking about on education, which obviously would become a very major driver in terms of the transformation of the society in the direction that we want. That's the critical importance of the topic. I must also say to the youth about buying bricks. We decided to set up this library because many people are saying, for instance, I get this query all the time. When are we going to get your memoirs? Because we want to read about what happened. I said, sure, you will get the memoirs. But in the meantime, let's put together this information. I can tell you, for instance, some of the information that will be there deals with the responses of the government from '94 to the financial challenges that we faced. Minister of Finance, how do you manage a rand? There was those old things, commercial and financial rand. What do you do about all this? Budget deficits, exchange rates, people were dodging taxes. You got a very detailed record of this. And I'm quite sure if anybody goes through that record, they will find that it'll help them to solve our financial problems 20 years hence. So it's important to understand the nature of what would be in this library of this kind. That it has to be an instrument to help to change South Africa for the better. Not just to say, oh, I went to that library, I read something, oh, what a lovely story. But it must be an instrument for change. A place where, for instance, the young people must come and say, how do we respond to our today's challenges? And maybe what is it that we can draw on from the past, which might help us to answer the question we're posing to ourselves now. It's an important project. It must succeed, we think. And I really wanted to say congratulations to the youth for taking a job of contributing, so that this thing, they also feel a sense of ownership. But in the end, thank you very much to our presenters, and apologies for the incident in the lift, but we did our best to keep ourselves busy. But thanks for everything you've done, and thanks to the chefs.
Thank you, President. So I believe there is a gift giving as well. President Mbeki, there's 2 books that are from you to our 2 other speakers. Thank you, President Mbeki. And thank you to our 2 wonderful earlier speakers as well. I think that we have come away, interruptions notwithstanding, with just a heck of a lot to think about. And I feel certainly inspired. I think if we have to summarize tonight, listening to what we were talking about, I mean, I think we come to the conclusion, in amongst all the complexity, that we do indeed need to get to a point of a digital-first, community-centric solution that we move towards. There's an incredible amount of complexity within that. If I think back on, in terms of my own personal belief, I always think, you know, we start with emotions and we finish with facts. And if we look at the emotions that we feel around education, and particularly the work that we're doing at Heavy Chef, and I see what Sam's doing, and Sonqoba, you know, it's an incredibly emotional topic, and I think it elicits a lot of discourse. And from what I can tell, and I agree with you, President Mbeki, it's time for less talk and more action. And with that in mind, Heavy Chef, despite the funny name, we have a very serious intent in terms of eating our own food and practicing what we preach, and actually becoming doers rather than talkers. That is our message. And I think, if I hear you right, President Mbeki, there was a challenge on the table there, and I believe that we need to follow this up with some real action points. And Max, I believe that's a discussion. Sam and Sonqoba, we need to have a discussion after this, and I think we would like to, I think on behalf of the Heavy Chef team and the community here tonight, to invite all of you just to please follow this conversation. We will be continuing and we will be moving forward, and hopefully we will come up with something that truly is a simple, practical, long-term vision. And embrace the complexity, the scale, the scope, and the velocity of the 4th Industrial Revolution that we are here to expect. In closing, I would just like to say a massive thank you to President Mbeki. I would like us all just to really support this vision of the Presidential Library. We will be putting out quite a lot of communication over the next few months about the project and how you can support it. So please do follow Everything Heavy Chef for details. Please do follow the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and we will be giving you guys some more pointers on that and some updates. And I just want to thank everybody for their patience, and also there's some books at the back there, books about President Mbeki's life. And I encourage you to go have a look and to purchase the books as well. Guys, stick around for a conversation. Drive safe. If you're not driving, take your Taxify, and we'll see you soon. Sorry, 1 second. I'm getting gestures here. Okay, sorry, just the formalities, please. Can I ask you to remain seated while President Mbeki leaves? I've been instructed on that. Guys, can we give President Mbeki a warm round of applause? Thank you. Thank you, guys. Personally, I'm going to be taking the fire escape. Thank you, everybody.